Hello, I'm Val Hale, Vice President for University Relations here at Utah Valley University, and I'm honored to welcome you to the Reed and Christine Halliday Executive Lecture Series in the Woodbury School of Business. Did I do that well, Randy? All right, okay. We're most fortunate today to have with us Mr. Bryan Christiansen. He is Senior Vice President of Program Management Services at Affiliated Computer Services, a Xerox company. I might mention that ACS was purchased by Xerox in 2010 for $6.5 billion. ACS is a global leader in business process and information technology services, and we'll have Bryan tell us about that in a little bit. He joined ACS Computer Services in 2004. He has extensive experience in corporate finance, strategy development and operations, and a broad knowledge of ACS through several leadership roles there, including, listen to this, Senior Vice President of Consumer Finance Solutions, Vice President of Operations for Commercial Solutions Group, Chief of Staff for Human Capital Management Solutions, now HR Services, and Vice President of Operational Strategy for 3 ACS groups. He was also a Senior Vice President in ACS's Acquisitions Operations Office, working on the ACX Xerox integration. Prior to joining ACS, Bryan was a consultant with Monitor Group, a strategy consulting firm based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, which incidentally President Holland worked at a little bit before Bryan. And he also served as Senior Vice President of Finance for MediConnect Global. He received a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management with an emphasis in International Finance from BYU and a Master of Business Administration from Duke University. Also a President Holland connection there. Bryan helped start Navigator Point Academy, a K-9 Utah public charter school, and he currently serves as chairman of the school's governing board. Bryan, we're very grateful to have you here today.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here today, and thank you very much for the kind words, the introduction. I was actually scheduled to speak earlier in the year, and I'm very thrilled that I'm able to be here today. I had a role change, and that happens at ACS. We see ACS stands for always changing something. And so something changed, and I wasn't able to make the original date. So I've had a long time to think about what we should talk about today. Before I do that, I do want to get a little bit more into who I am, and I thought I would write something up on the slide to introduce myself a little more. If we start at the top, you'll see that it is ACS, Affiliated Computer Services, purchased by Xerox February 2010. It was a $6.5 billion Fortune 500 company. We used to say it was the largest Fortune 500 company that no one had ever heard of. Compete with EDS, Perot, Accenture, companies you've heard of, but ACS, we didn't do direct-to-consumer advertising so that a lot of people didn't know who we were. We just advertised to our clients. Grew to $6.5 billion. Xerox recognized the value that we brought. It's an outsourcing firm. We do a lot of business process outsourcing services. If you've gone to 7-Eleven, you have used our services. 7-Eleven was our first client in 1988, and they continue to be a client today. Xerox bought us. We're now part of a $22 billion company, 136,000 employees across the world. We are worldwide. Within Utah itself, ACS has 2,500 employees. I don't know if you knew that. We've got 5 locations. We have 1 in Provo, 2 in Sandy, 1 in Draper, and 1 in Salt Lake. We already talked about the roles that I have had. Been a great experience learning about all the different areas within ACS. Right now, in my role as a Senior Vice President of Program Management Services, I have 5 companies that I run. I work in a larger group called the Government Healthcare Solutions Group, run by our group president, Will Saunders, and I run our Eligibility Services Group, our Pharmacy Benefits Management Group, our Care and Quality Solutions Group, our Audit and Compliance Group, and our Long-Term Care Group. And so those different groups, we really do a lot of work for state Medicaid. And within GHS itself, we work for about 33 different states. All right, so what else about me? We talked about Monitor Group. Monitor Group was really, really fun. Had a chance to do consulting for Fortune 500 companies across the U.S. and also globally. Worked in acquisitions, worked in marketing strategy, worked in the pharma world, the mutual fund space, retail, heavy manufacturing. Got a really good background, but realized I wanted to do a little bit more with my career. Went and got an MBA, and then ended up at ACS. A couple other things. I wanted to make sure you knew a little bit about me on the bottom. I'm actually an East Coast guy, born in New York, raised in Florida, moved back and forth growing up, married my high school sweetheart. For those of you that know BYU really well, after high school, we both graduated. I went to BYU. She went to a university called Stetson University, and I convinced her after a semester to come out and meet me. And then I went on an LDS mission, and when I got back, she was still single, which is actually surprising out here. And so we got married and have two boys, two wonderful boys. Well, what I wanted to share today is I was trying to think about what would be, this is the last meeting like this for the semester, what would be something interesting, helpful, something you haven't heard before, and what could I use in my background to help you in your careers? Because when I think about why we go to school, it's often because we're looking to improve ourselves in many ways, and a job is one of the ways we hope to graduate and get a job. So, that said, I wanted to talk about if you get one thing out of today, I want you to understand what the key is to a successful career strategy. And just one thing, when you walk out the doors today and you're writing your papers, if it's one thing you remember, I'm happy. Now, it does say up there, career strategy. If you can walk away with more than one thing, I would love for you to walk away with how to successfully chart your career based on how to successfully build a company. I think there's some parallels there that are very interesting. But if you only can get one thing, I hope that you get it. But before I tell you what it is, when I was talking to Randy about what to do today, he said stories are great. And so I need some participation here. And before we go on, I guess some ground rules would be good. I've got a presentation, but I'd love to, if you have questions during, I'd be happy to answer your questions, but we do have time at the end to answer questions. So if we don't get to it during the presentation, write it down, we'll get to it at the end. But I do need participation. So how many of you have heard about the Beverly Hillbillies? Does that sound familiar? I know that. How many of you know the theme song? I saw a couple hands. Well, you know what? I want to talk about the Beverly Hillbillies today because it is it's a wonderful show. And do we have a volunteer that could stand up and sing the song? The words are up there. Does anyone want to stand up and sing it to us? I thought about singing it, but I thought I'd give someone else a chance. If someone wants to sing it, that'd be great.
I'll do it.
Sure. All right.
Now, we're not going for quality here, okay? Come and listen to a story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground came a bubbling crude. Oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. Well, first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. King folks said, Jed, move away from there. They said California is the place you ought to be, so they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is. Swimming pools, movie stars.
All right. Ten times better than I would have done. That's wonderful. What a great start. So the next song we're going to sing. So Beverly Hillbillies. We've heard about it. When we think about the show, images come to our mind. Did you know that it was the #1 song for 2 years? The first years it showed, it ran from 62 to 71. In the years that followed, it was always top 20, except the last year when it was number 33. And in 71, they canceled a whole bunch of shows that they called, I think it was tree shows. Any shows that had trees in them, they seemed to cancel all of them. So Beverly Hillbillies went off the air at that time. But very, very successful. The song was even a #1 country hit. And on the Billboard charts, just across the U.S., I think the song reached up to number 32 or something like that, 42 or 32. What's interesting, though, is this fellow named Jed Clampett, and I want to talk about him because he is an example for us in we think about how to figure out our careers and put together this career strategy. It's not we need to be like Jed and dress like him, but viewers knew what to expect when they tuned into the Beverly Hillbillies. They knew he loved his family, his kinfolk. They knew that whenever he had something to think about, he went out to the curb and started whittling. Had a great dog, always had the same truck. And as much as Mr. Drysdale, the banker, tried to change him and tried to help him do things with his money, he had $65 million, I think is what it was. And you think back in that day and time, $65 million today is a lot. It was even more back then. He was the same person. He was in every single episode, all 274 episodes. When viewers dialed in, they knew what to expect. They knew Jed was Jed. And when they tuned in, they knew it would be funny because they knew he was never going to change. And that's what I want to talk about today is reputation. He had a reputation for being honest, for being himself. When we think about business and what is most important in business, and we think about that key, that one key that I want you to walk out with, I want you to think about reputation and good name. Because if nothing else, that's what people will remember about you. And that will either open doors for you in the future or it will close doors. When I say close doors, I mean it will close them hard if you don't have a good reputation. But it will open doors very, very wide if you have a great reputation. Jed had a reputation, and the show was very successful because of his reputation. So no more songs. But I want to talk about the agenda. So we sort of start out with, all right, it's reputation. Jed's a great example. But I want to talk about companies, products, and also the individual when it comes to reputation. There's a quote from Jeff Bezos, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the founder of Amazon. And he's got a great quote that ties the two together. I want to move throughout the time we've got together, talk about company strategy and a framework on how to build a company. In my career, that's what I've done. I've built growth strategies and turnaround strategies, and that's what I'm brought in to do. Career strategy. The company strategy can be translated into career strategy if you just tweak a couple things. If you want to think about, You Inc., you can do some things in a very strategic way to make yourself more marketable and more desirable from an employer perspective. And let's talk about them. I think it'd be valuable. And then, of course, there's a call to action and a Q&A session. But let's jump into this quote from Jeff Bezos. Very straightforward. He said, a brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. There is a tie there. If you think about that, are there products that you always use, you always go to? Are there products you always avoid because of what either the brand means, your experience with the product? Have you had a bad experience with one product and written that product off forever? It's the same in the business world. Employers or people in business who have had a bad experience with a certain company or individual, if they're not required to use that individual, the door's closed for that person. Okay, so we've got the tie there. So company and individual. Let's look at the company part first. I think you recognize these companies, right? What's the first one on the left? It's Apple, yeah. What's the one on the right? Disney. And they both have good connotations, joy and happiness and love and peace all come to our minds when we think about those companies. Innovation, Apple. If you think about how they've progressed over the years, think about when they were only doing the iPod, and then they moved to the iPhone and the iPad. The great success they had with the iPod had this halo effect, this reputation, this brand that extended to other areas, extended to the phone, extended to the tablet that they've got out now. If you look at the track record in technology, tablets had been out there before, but this halo. Think about Disney. What does Disney mean? Family fun, etc. They've been able to leverage that brand to a number of different parks. They've got TV channels now. I mean, the brand means something. So there is that. I love just a couple ideas from you. Other brands you can think of that are like this, that are positive, and that positiveness adds some value to the company. Can you think of any additional ones? McDonald's. Yep, McDonald's means quality food. It's just the same anywhere in the world. It's fast, and it's relatively inexpensive. What other companies can you think of? Lexus? In your mind, what does Lexus stand for? Exactly. So Toyota did a great job of building a new brand, a premium brand, and all the German manufacturers didn't really think it was going to take off, and wow, it has taken off. Any other ones? Pardon me? Google. Google's a very good example. The Google brand is very, very powerful. So I think we can all think about these brands and what the brand has done for the company and what it will continue to do for the company. I work for a company, Xerox, and Xerox has been, the name has been sort of like Kleenex for tissues. When people talk about copying, they reference Xerox, so it means something to them. So brands really do matter, and I think that in your classes, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? So I'm sort of beating a dead horse here, but I want to make sure we remember brands, we go back one, brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. Okay, so there are great examples. What about some poor examples? You know, I think we've all sort of seen this BP sign on the left-hand side. You know, when I lived in North Carolina, I thought that the BP station was a great place to get gas. It was the cleanest one around. It had a really pretty green logo. It must mean environmentally friendly, something like that. And now as you look on the internet and look at all these different things people have done with the logo, the reputation has been damaged. During that oil spill, I remember hearing on the news that people were avoiding their gas stations. So if you wanted cheap gas, you went to a BP station because they were trying to drive volume to their stations. No one wanted to go there because their reputation was that bad. Any other companies you can think of that would fall into this sort of category where their brand, you think about it, you're like, all right, I'm okay, I don't need to buy that product? Yes. Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, yep. Yeah, so you look at the EA Sports and their game for him, the latest version doesn't have his picture on it, even though it's at the Tiger Woods game. Others?
It was interesting. I really observed how Toyota was trying to protect their brand when all that stuff came out about their safety and recalls and stuff. It was interesting to watch the moves they made to protect that.
Exactly. So the Toyota brand built up. The reputation was really great, and it helped them sell. And now, with the issues, they better protect it because they realize, they live or die by their brand. Any other ones you can think of? Yeah. Enron. That's a great company to work for. Yeah, there are a lot of companies. When we think about those companies, the brand means something. We heard the Lexus example. Has anyone ever heard of Yugos? The Yugo car back in the 80s, the cheapest new car that you could buy. Well, the quality was tied to the price also, and they're not here anymore. Hyundai sort of had that same thing where they came in with a Hyundai Excel, and it was low cost, low quality. They had this reputation. But over the years, they've changed this reputation, realizing their brand is what was going to save them. And Consumer Reports now ranks them really high, and people are buying them for their quality and for the brand now, whereas before they weren't. So brand does matter. All right, so I've got one more slide on brand, and it's interesting because great quote. Has anyone heard? You've heard of Warren Buffett, right? Yeah, I know you've heard of him. So let's see what his quote is. We'll read it. So ignore the bottom part for a second. The first part, let's read that. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. Okay, so our brand, our reputation is our personal brand on what people know about us. If we think about that, we will do things differently. Then jump to the news. Jump to the news within the last month. And this quote is very, very recent. So David Sokol, who was the right-hand person for Warren Buffett, who was sort of identified as a very likely successor to Mr. Buffett when he retires. He's in his 80s. He resigned. Why did he resign? Because of something that he did that ruined people's trust, ruined his reputation. He bought some stock in a company right before he pitched it to Berkshire Hathaway to buy it. And so they bought this chemical company for $9 billion, and he bought enough stock that he made $3 million on the deal. So he saw an opportunity, followed it, and now a door to be the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway is closed to him forever. You can imagine investors, what their response would be if Warren Buffett were to then put him in as the CEO to take his place. It wouldn't happen. So, very personal example for Mr. Sokol about reputation being everything when it comes to business. In my experience, I'll give you a couple. There's one company that I can think of, and there's a couple individuals where the reputation has really shifted the way I think about them. There was a private equity company that bought one of my friend's companies, and they promised a lot at the beginning. It looked like a wonderful marriage. Once they came in and bought some equity and had control, their story changed, and now he has since left the company. You think about that private equity company, how many deals, so if anyone knows about that one deal that they did, how many people are going to feed more deals to that private equity company? I can tell you how many. It's going to be 0. It's because the reputation has been sullied. The other one, I've got 2 more. I'll just share one of them though. It's a guy that I worked with years and years ago. Very, very smart guy, PhD, and he came to the office one day and he said, "You know what, Bryan? This is awesome. You're going to love what I did. You're going to love what I did. You're going to love it." And I said, "All right, so what did you do?" This was back in 2000 during the internet heyday where everyone was trying to just give anything away so they had web traffic. And he said, "You know what, I got a free printer last night. It's an awesome printer, and it's coming in a couple days." I said, "Well, how'd you do it?" He said, "That's the part you're going to love." He said, "There was a coupon that was for a free printer, and it had expired. It expired the day before, and I found it on one of the deal tracker sites, and I was like, oh, it's expired. But I called them up, and I told them that I was an old lady who didn't know how to use her computer. And I'd been trying the day before to figure out how to get that laptop, and my computer wouldn't work. And they felt sorry for me and gave me the printer. And I started scratching my head. Here was a guy, he was making over $100,000 a year, and he lied to get a $100 printer. How do you think my view on him has changed since? It's changed. When you think about looking for someone that you can trust inherently with anything and everything, and you know they'll always tell you the truth, that little thing, our relationship has never been the same. So please remember that reputation is everything. That's the one thing I want you to walk away with. So if you walk out the doors, if your ears turn off from here out, remember that, because it'll pay dividends. And all the success that I've had in my career up to this point has been because when I say I'm going to do something, they know I'm going to do it. They know exactly what to expect from me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Any questions on what we've talked about thus far before I jump into a very exciting, busy slide? Okay, so no comments. All right, so company strategy. What I do is I go around and I help figure out how to grow companies and how to fix companies. And it's a lot easier to fix a company when you sort of look at it and think about building it from the ground up. If you can figure that out, instead of taking a company and saying, oh, look at all these pieces, let's sort of move them around and make them look a little better. If you can take the company, learn about it, and then step back and say, hey, if I were going to build this from scratch, how would I do it? That's how you can make a company that will really hum and really make money. You want a company like that. So this is a structure that I learned at Monitor Group years and years and years ago. And I learned this structure from a guy, very, very outstanding guy. He used to be the chief HR person for American Express. He was in consulting beforehand. He was a Harvard Business School grad, and he did some consulting for American Express, redid all of their HR. And they said, oh, you redid it, so why don't you just come and run it? So if you remember the Jerry Seinfeld days, that's when he was doing HR for American Express, and Jerry Seinfeld would always come to the New York office and talk to him. Well, we worked on a case together that was for a large pharmaceutical company, and they had a clinical sciences department, $6 billion. So if you think about the overall company and you start to carve it up into its pieces, one of the most important parts of a pharma company is its clinical sciences department, because that's where they develop the new drugs. They had a lot of turnover. They had people that were using it as a as a career training ground. They'd stay for 4 or 5 years and then leave. And we were brought in to help them build the company from scratch and figure out how to help them. This was a strategy that we used. It was pretty simple. There are a whole bunch of strategies, or sorry, not strategies, but frameworks that are similar. McKinsey has one. So there's a lot of them. This one I thought was easy because it was the SPSPS framework. So if I could remember SPSPS, I could remember how to draw it up, and I'd get them sorted right, and then I'd order them the right way. The neat part about it, though, is if you think about a company and building a company, you have to ask some questions first. You have to get the strategy right before you do anything else. One of the things you'll see in the newspaper is a lot of turnover. You know, this CEO was fired, that person was fired. They're bringing someone else in new to change their direction. Well, you know what? That's in the middle there. That's the structure part. So let me go through these really quickly and talk about them. Strategy is knowing what you're going to do for the clients and how you're going to win, et cetera. There's some questions, and we'll get into them in a second. Processes. The processes that you build for a company need to support your strategies. You say, what do I want to be when I grow up as a company? All your processes should support that. The structure aspect is, okay, now that I have all the processes set up and I know what I want to do as a strategy, how should I organize myself? Who should report to whom? Should I have a department that does this, a department that does that? That's where the structure comes in. Then you've got the people side of it where you say, now that I've got my structure, I had to put people in there that have the skill sets to fill those roles. And at the very end, you see systems. Systems are compensation systems, your technology systems, things that help support everything else. So the upper left, you see, you got the strategy and all the things that cascade down. You see arrows that go down and up. They all have to be in sync, but they all, at the end of the day, they have to support the strategy. Okay, so we're looking at that newspaper. You always see people being laid off. They're actually taking a gamble. When you let someone go and you bring someone else in and hope that the change in structure fixes your problem, what you're actually hoping is the person that you bring in for that structure change, either the people or structure change, you're hoping, crossing your fingers and just praying that they change your strategy and they change your processes. So it's actually much easier to say, let's just work on our strategy and our processes, and let's not have this big blow up the company and fire everyone and hire different people. Let's just fix the things that need to be fixed. It is the strategy. It is the processes. Okay, so I went to the back and was trying to read to see if you could see what's underneath each one of these. And I think it's pretty legible. The ones I want to focus on, really I want to focus on the strategy questions right now. We brought this to a client who was an international retailer, and they had acquired a company over in Europe. They were a U.S. retailer expanding globally. They bought a company in the UK that actually had a big footprint over on the continent, on continental Europe. And they were trying to figure out how to mesh the two companies together. They were similar, but they were dissimilar. So what we did is we said, let's talk about the strategy. That's the top upper left-hand corner. But strategy, just to talk about it, you need to get into the nitty-gritty and define what it is before you can actually do something with your strategy. These are the questions to ask if you're going to build a good company. If you've got good answers to these, and then you build the processes to support it, chances are you're going to be really successful. When you go and talk to companies that are struggling, they have a hard time really answering these 4 questions. You want to know, first off, what are our goals and aspirations? What do we want to be as a company? Do we want to have revenue growth? Is that the most important? Profitability? Is there a certain level of profitability that's important to us? Is it more of a social company? Are we a 501c3 nonprofit? But what is our goal as a company? And you can look at what some of the goals could be. So I've listed them underneath in the left-hand side. Could be revenue, it could be market share, it could be geographic reach. We want to be the largest company in X space, and we want to dominate. So you set out these goals. But then you have to talk about where you're really going to play. Because you can say, we're going to be this type of company, but if you don't know what markets you're addressing, you really won't be able to sell. Are we a Utah company focused only on Utah? Are we a company that's going to focus on the West, the US? Are we going to go after Canada? What about Central America? What about Europe? We have to define those things to be able to figure out what the right processes are and the right structure. You move it over, how are we going to win? What's going to differentiate us? Well, you know what? You've got on here cost leadership, the product differentiation, a mix of both? Are we going to win because we have good distribution capacity? Is it the service level? Are we going to have a really strong marketing arm? I would add in there, how are we going to win? That's where you start to put in the brands of the companies. You think about Toyota, they knew that they would never be able to win going forward if their brand wasn't strong. If they had a brand that said, you can buy us, but you might die, no one was going to buy the car. You have to figure out what you need to win, and that was one of the things they decided. What capabilities do you need to win? Okay, so it's great we know we need to win by doing X, Y, or Z. All right, so let's make it tactical. So when people think about strategists and people who make strategies, they often say they're great at thinking high level, but they can't get in the weeds. They can't actually figure out what to do. That's where the capabilities come in. Okay, so if I need to have a good distribution arm, if one of the ways I'm going to win is through having a low-cost distribution system, all right, I guess I need to have one of those systems. That's a capability that I need. If I'm going to win on brand, I've got to have something that builds up that brand. Okay, so we think about that. Let's jump to an example of this in action. It's the Mickey Mouse example. It's the Disney example. And the interesting part is there's a story behind this. Back in 2004, I was putting together a slide deck and was putting together an example related to this. So this is a slide I pulled from 2004. And at the time, Disney had just broken off its strategic relationship with Pixar. And everyone's heard of Pixar and those movies. Pixar-related movies generated about 40% of Disney's net income. So when the news broke, hey, we're not going to have Pixar anymore, people were like, they were freaked out. What is going to happen? So I went through and I said, you know what, given the framework that I have, if I were Disney, what would I do? So I went through and I did the analysis, and I went through and said, okay, so what did I think their strategy is? So this is an outside in. And I said, you know, I think these are their goals, and I'll read them in case you can't see it in the back. I think that, you know, they're a marketing-driven entertainment company. They'll have the most trusted, the most recognized, and the preferred brand when it comes to entertainment. They'll achieve double-digit revenue growth and earnings growth, and they will be global. I thought, okay, if I were Disney, I think that's probably what they're going after. Where are they going to play? Well, I knew that they were going to play in the animated film market. Their target audience in those films are families with young children, and they layer in sort of that adult part so adults don't mind watching the movies 20, 30 times. And then we'll be in every country. That's where they're going to play. They're not going to say we're just U.S. They're in Hong Kong. They're all over the place. How are they going to win? Differentiated product. Have to be a marketing powerhouse. They need to be able to distribute across the world. And then the last part, they need to produce the freshest, most entertaining movies in the marketplace. And then talks about the capabilities, marketing group, licensing, creative talent. As I went through and did the analysis, I realized that once Pixar was out of the picture, they had a gap, a capabilities gap. And I went through and did a little value chain analysis to say, okay, of all the things that they can do in-house and they used to do with Pixar, what can they build? What can they borrow from someone through a partnership? Or what do they have to buy? And I realized there were certain things they just could not afford to build themselves. It was going to take too long. So then after I did this analysis, about 5 months later, it was announced that Disney purchased Pixar. Because there were certain things when they looked at their strategy, they had gaps, and they had to fill those capability gaps. And that was the fastest, most cost-effective way to do it. So this does work. But the same thing can be done with Nike or with Walmart. So if you think about Walmart, how do they win? Is it brand name? Or Walmart wins because they bring brand name products, not necessarily the Walmart brand itself, but brand name products to consumers at a low cost. The last 5 years, they sort of strayed from that. They're going back to that again. But to do that, they had to have certain capabilities. One is a large footprint. So they have stores all over the place. Then they had to have a super, super, super efficient distribution system. And they own these massive hubs. And so they follow the same thing. Any questions on those 3 slides about strategy and building a strategy for a company? Yes?
Is there any difference between large companies and small companies with your strategy, or is it somewhat similar?
Very great question. When it comes to large, so the question is there a difference between large company versus small company when it comes to strategy? The answer is no. I mean, yes, they're going to have different goals and aspirations. Yes, they're going to have different ways they're going to win. But the questions are the same, whether they're large or small. So if you're going to win in the marketplace, you better know why you're even there. You better know where you're going to play. You better know, if you're large or small, how you're going to win the business. What's the value proposition? Why would anyone buy your product versus somebody else's? And you better know what capabilities you need so you can deliver what you want to deliver. Great question. Any other questions? I know there's a burning question here. How does this apply to people? If you think about your question about large companies, small companies, think about a person as a small company of one person. And I want to caveat that really quickly. There was a marketing guy, a VP of marketing, that I thought was great, but he had this little quirk about him. When he thought about brand and somebody having a reputation, he took it to the extreme, a really unhealthy extreme, where he thought about it as, he needed to build up his own brand, and it came at the expense of his relationships with other people. So he was always trying to make it so he looked the best, so he looked like he was the person bringing in all the sales, so he was the one that was shining. And he took it so far that it was actually, he had a reputation, which was his brand, of only wanting to build up his own brand and not others. And it really came back and bit him. But let's jump into that whole, how does this really apply from a career strategy perspective? So, like I said, walk out the door with knowing a strong reputation will open doors. And then if this can stick, I think you'll have a lot of fun with this, and it will help you figure out what to do over the next X many months as you're figuring out where you want to play in the market yourself, what jobs you want, and how you can get the job that you really, really want. Hey, it looks the same, doesn't it? It's I've grayed out a couple of them because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the people and the systems side of the house. But I do want to talk about the first S, P, and S. The strategy, the processes, and the structure. So I'll just read them so that the folks in the back can, if you can't read them. So think about it. What are my goals and aspirations as an individual? Where will I play in the market? How will I win? What capabilities do I need to win? Do I have those capabilities? If I don't have those capabilities, how am I going to get those capabilities? One of the ways, you're here at UVU building up the capabilities you need to be able to win. Well, let's just make sure we have a full, complete picture, a full, complete strategy. We jump over to processes. How should I approach my work to realize the strategy? So in the company context, when you make it bigger, you're talking about processes between different business units, et cetera, or how do you process an invoice? In this context, is what are the processes I have control over, and how should I go about carrying out those processes? From a structure perspective, instead of it being an org chart, think about it more as a business network or a support network. It could be colleagues, it could be family and friends. What type of network do you need to be able to be successful? And think about how they all link up towards that strategy. And this could be career. If you want to take it into other dimensions, it could be family, it could be just life in general. So if you think about what are my goals and aspirations? All right, so I break it into multiple pieces. I've got a career part, I've got a family part, I've got a church part, I've got a community service part. Whatever the parts are, you could actually break those out and build a strategy for your life. I'm just going to talk about the career side, though. All right, so talked about those first three a little bit. Let's just jump into the strategy part and look at those questions. So this is what I would suggest. And this is the part that I hope that once you get the whole aspect of my reputation is everything, that you can take something like this, and it doesn't have to look like this, but something like this and go through just the thought process. When companies do this, they're amazed at what gaps they have or where people disagree, where they look at it and say, well, from a capabilities perspective, this group over here thinks we need X, this one thinks we need Y. They've never talked about it, and so they don't do either of them. In this exercise, the beauty of it is it's not that it's hard, it's just that it is structured, and it allows for action because it's got structure to it. Okay, so strategy questions on the left, potential answers on the right. What are my goals and aspirations? Is it career growth within the same field? Is it changing fields? Is it increasing salary? Is it, what is it? What are the goals and aspirations? Where am I going to play? Are you a finance major? Are you a marketing major? OB? Operations? Where in the market do you want to play? Where do your passions lie? How are you going to win? I put in blue in bold, and I'm not going to take it off. It's the strong reputation. But what are the other things? What are the other things that you need to be able to win? And then you can start going through the rest. Well, the capabilities I need to win, there's X skill set. Do I have them, yes or no? And if not, how am I going to get it? Am I going to, am I going to go to school for it? Am I going to go to someone in my network that I built and learn from them? So that's that first part. That's what I would suggest. That's what I do with each of the businesses that I run. Not on a personal, individual level, but I make sure each one of my businesses knows how they're going to win and what capabilities they need. All right. Any questions up to this point when it comes to how this applies to individuals? Lots of questions. Well, I'm going to jump into this part. This is probably my favorite slide. All right, so we're at the processes and structure part. And I was talking to my wife, and she had a couple really good suggestions on things to share here. And some of them are my own also. But when you think about it, as you're starting out your career, maybe even if you're mid-career, things to think about to make it so you have this good reputation. I'll read through them and give you some color commentary on them. One is check your ego at the door. Another one is look for the right answer, not looking to be right. People who always want to be right are often excluded from future projects. Pay your dues. There's a season for everything. If you look at that, so I guess I'll talk about them at the beginning. The ego at the door, that's just straightforward. People know who cocky people are. And the majority of folks don't like working with cocky people. They like to work with somebody who is dedicated and is down to earth. And people that are down to earth go a lot further. Even though you see Donald Trump on TV and he's got an ego, that's not what employers are looking for. That's not what team members are looking for from their teammates. Looking for the right answer versus looking to always be right. There are people that get avoided, that can never be wrong. If you always are looking to be right, you're not a good team member, and people will try to not have to work with you. Versus somebody who says, you know what, I may be wrong, I have an opinion, I'm here to get the right answer. Let's work towards the right answer. That is the team member that employers are always looking for. Okay, pay your dues, seasons for everything. So for you accountants out there, we think about FIFO, first in, first out. I would suggest a LIFO mentality when it comes to working. Not that you have to work 40 hours a day, which is impossible, but the first and last out does something to show that you're dedicated. I've got this, back in consulting. Consulting is a very demanding job. And you're often working hours that most people in the U.S. just think, well, why are you doing that? I did it because I really liked the work. But I was on 2 cases at a time, 2 cases in parallel. And at one time, they were both merger and acquisition cases, which meant I was going home between midnight and 2 in the morning every single day. But I loved the work, and I was able to send my boss home, and I got more responsibility because of it. And I was practicing the first in, last out, and not because I wanted to spend time for time's sake, but I was willing, and this is what it is, it's not the time itself, it's the mentality of being willing to dedicate the time necessary to get the work done. And it also ties with the second one, or the one underneath that, I guess it's number 4, taking work off your boss's plate. Hey, I'm here, I'm willing to do the work, I can get it done for you, I can handle it, go home. So if I'm sending my boss home at midnight or 12:30, and he knows that he has to get sleep for a meeting the next day, but when he comes in, everything in that presentation will be exactly right, that's great. Because the next time, he'll give me more responsibility, and the next time more responsibility, and that's how you get career trajectory that is on an upward slope versus a downward slope. Okay, making others look good, that's important. No one likes to be working with someone who's always trying to take all the credit. And that last bullet point there, all those together work towards that reputation. So talking about reputation is everything. Let's think about a career strategy. And then from an implementation perspective, Do things that ensure that you'll have a good reputation. The last one on this that I want to talk about is the relationship. So if we jump back two, and look at the processes, how should I approach my work to realize the strategy? Actually, sorry, the structure. We already did that one. So the structure, what types of relationships should I have? Has anyone ever gone to a networking function? Networking? They're fun, aren't they? Has anyone joined LinkedIn yet? So you know what LinkedIn is? It's sort of a professional network. It's like a Facebook or one of those types of sites, but it's more professional in nature, and you link people up. Interestingly enough, I'm on a group, and someone posted to the group and they said, "Hey, anyone interested in networking?" And over time, I think it's been 364 people that have said, "Yeah, I'm interested in networking. Link me into your network." And you know what? That's ineffective. The thing that this says, that's not on the slide. Let me go forward. Assemble your advisory board versus traditional networking. The fact that you have someone's business card, or that you met them at some point in time, or that you link to them on LinkedIn but you've never met them and have nothing in common, is not going to help your career. So if you have 5,000 LinkedIn contacts, but you don't know any of them, and you've LinkedIn because it's fun, it's not going to help you figure out where you're going to go, or if you're looking for it to change careers and go into a different company, it's not going to help you like it would if you built a network of people that you actively worked with. When I was graduating from business school, I had a couple job offers. I had one in Atlanta. So I'm from the South, and my wife and I thought we'd always live in Florida. In the South. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, so I didn't think I could live in Florida. But so we had an offer that was in Atlanta, and we had an offer that was in Texas. And we thought, you know what? It'd be great to live in Utah. I have 3 sisters. They all moved out here to Utah, went to school here, and stayed here. And my wife's an only child, and so we said, "Oh, we should go to Utah." I did the advisory board to find a job out here in Utah. I had 2 offers and flew out here twice on my own. And I called people up, and it was very, very simple. It started with the traditional networking, but you have to take it one step further to start building that relationship. And I talked with a really smart guy who was at Ernst & Young at the time. His name was Tom Lund. And he said, "You know, Bryan, this is what you need to do. You need to call up these contacts that you have that are now part of your network that are dormant. I mean, it's not great to have dormant contacts. Call them up and invite them to lunch and say, you know what, I'm interested in learning more about what you do. I'm interested to know more about your career path and where you work right now. I'm thinking of, going into that. It'd be interesting to me. And you know what? Best case, one day maybe we get to work together. Worst case, made a new friend." And just that simple introduction and that simple invitation to lunch, that built a network where I was able to actually talk to people, and they got to know me. So what I found in business is people, once they get to know you, if they have opportunities, they're very, very interested in helping you because they have that personal connection with you. But if they just have your business card, or if they just know your name, and they don't really know much about you, if they were to refer you to somebody else, then they're putting their reputation on the line. And if you jump back to Bezos's quote about reputation being a person's brand, it's risky for them to do that. It's risky for them to say, "Oh, yeah, I met this person on LinkedIn. I know nothing about them, but they're great. Hire them." If they work out terribly, you're going to know I'm not good at giving you references. And so that last part, that's actually pretty critical. Build a network instead of building a Rolodex. That's ineffective.
Final question.
Yes?
Final question.
Oh, any final questions? It is. Wow. You know what? That's good, because call to action and the Q&A. Please develop your career strategy. Build a strong relationship. I don't know if you know who Mary Kay Ash is. Mary Kay Ash founded Mary Kay Cosmetics. They're doing very well. Honesty is the cornerstone of all success in her book, part of the reputation. And action-oriented, don't just think about doing it, really do it. And thank you for having me today.